We are happy to announce that this episode of the SWW show is partially brought to you by Humble Bundle. Well, not really. We are part of the Humble Bundle referral program, and we just wanted to say that if you like really cheap games and maybe helping charity pending the Humble thing going on, all you have to do is go to humblebundle.com/question mark partner equals SWW. That's right, humblebundle.com/question mark partner equals SWW. And you just do your normal stuff, and it just kind of helps us get a couple bucks here and there. Maybe it helps AJ get his lights, maybe it's Mike camera, maybe we actually pay Corey for helping us out. But again, if you're going to go buy games anyway, it might be worth checking out. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to one of these interview episodes of the SWW show. I'm Mike, and today with me a special guest from, well, not that far away for once. Do you mind to get us started introducing yourself and the game we're here to talk about?
Absolutely. My name is Austin. I go online as Bossy or Bossy Pino. I'm a game developer located out of Washington State in America. And the game I'm here to talk about is a game called Cryohazard, which is a spooky turn-based strategy roguelite I started making 6 months ago. And here we are almost close to its launch, which is exciting.
We'll get into the game part in a second, but I've got to ask immediately. So you go by Bossy Pino. Are you really into wine, or where did that come from?
It's a very weird sort of story. Around 6 months ago, around the time I started making Cryohazard, I was flailing around for a new username. I go by Raven, is kind of my alter ego a lot of times online, but I wanted to kind of have a fresh start. And I was struggling to come up with a name. And I realized that there is this weird name I've been called kind of as long as I can remember, because my parents call me it. They call me Bossy. And when I was very young, apparently I would just say the words Bossy Pino all the time. I would like say it in like a sing-song way. So they've just like somewhat not mockingly, but like it's been like a little weird nickname in my family for me, Bossy Pino. And I said, well, that's weird, and no one is gonna have that name. And so
No,
now when I get
that's fair. No one has it.
like
I was
when
gonna
I get
say,
official I was just gonna say when I get like official documents like about Bossy Pino LLC like in the mail, I think it's hilarious because it just looks so silly, but it's not taken.
no, that's very good. We all have that. I get obnoxious amount of, because I have like some different, like I go into different aliases, like if I'm freelancing doing whatever, and it's always funny. You could just tell like what service now, because I like for some freelancing work, I have like QuickBooks and all that fun stuff, and you could just tell
Mhm.
immediately like, oh, this is where the mail is coming from because of like depending what name it says on the stuff. I was like, your username
Right.
for mine, because I still have a username that I got is gonna sound really age everyone for a second. Back when I used to play Club Penguin as a kid. So I always had the fun of like, it's just been my
Mm.
username, and it's just one of those, once you get it, you're like, I'm just never changing this thing because that's too much work.
I was also a Club Penguin user, not as much as my siblings. But yeah, I mean, once you are known throughout the Club Penguin community with a certain name, I mean, that sort of thing sticks around.
Yeah, see, that's the things they don't teach you as the kids that you need to teach kids now is like, once you make a name, the problem with how the internet works now is it's probably just going to be your username for a long time.
That
But
has
yeah,
been my experience with a lot of people. Yeah, it just sort of sticks. Yeah.
yeah, we're here to talk about Cryohazard. Which the first props I want to give you is you just said you started working on this thing 6 months ago and it's actually coming out soon, which as much as we all say we want to make 6 months games, it seems like you might be one of the rare people to actually pull it off. So I gotta ask immediately, how long did you think this project was going to take going into it?
Uh, well, this 6 months journey has been kind of a stepping stone in a much, much longer, more just constant stream of failed projects. So I've had a lot of projects that have lasted much, much longer than 6 months that will never see the light of day. And me kind of set that 6 month timeline. I very much built my scope around it And it was a little different this time because, like you said, you always go out with the best of intentions. You step out and you say, all right, this is going to take 6 months, 12 months, 2 years, and it never does. um, so the kind of lead up to starting Cryohazard was probably an additional 6 months prior of like these ideas stewing about, I want to make a game about trade. I want to make a game about railways and kind of just exploring ideas around it. A lot of failed prototypes that I did not build into that kind of 6 months. Once I had a prototype ready, and I was like, all right, I'm gonna hit the go button and start programming this thing. So it's been 6 months since I started like actively coding, but if I'm being truthful, it's been more like a year. uh, but I managed to stick to that 6 months because I built the game around that timeline. I said, all right, I need to release a game. I want to release a game that's a passion project of mine, and it's going to be small because what one guy can do in 6 months, it has to be small. So it was just constantly reflecting on my goals, what I was doing this for, uh, and and yeah, making it happen, putting in the work.
No, and even like that, it's still impressive because, like, as anyone can tell anyone, like, we've all heard these stories, and you'd probably agree too. It's like it's super easy once you start kind of making these things for it to be like, oh, I can add this or add this, and all of a sudden that's how we get these projects. You're
Mhm.
like, even if it's just hard coding 6 months. During that hard coding process, I'm assuming you've had to stop yourself dozens of times from just adding stuff that like would have just doubled the size of this thing.
Oh, absolutely. And I try not to get too scared of those things because a lot of times those kind of scope creep things have the best of intentions, right? They're legitimately cool ideas and things that have potential. Put them in a folder, write about them, explore them. If the game works out, that could be great DLC. If the game works out, it could be a future game project. It could be something entirely different. But they're very, very dangerous. Those little like, well, everything could be fully animated. Well, you could have 10 more maps. It's just it never ends. Especially, I tend to find game devs are a lot of times pretty. You have to be really creative to be successful as a game dev, and so the ideas are just coming all the time. Uh, Never stops.
Oh no, I completely agree. It is always that level of like, why always have one more idea or just one more thing that could make it better? But like that is part of the process too, is the like throw 10,000 things and really only five of them do. And you're always like, I always have this backlog of endless ideas that I could add to it. But let's
Yeah,
kind of jump into, if you don't mind, kind of the game loop, right? So it's actually like at least the way that I've seen it kind of being talked about in the Steam page, it's not inherently like end to end a long game, but it's more about like the loops and the process. Do you mind kind of digging in kind of I'm a player, I'm hopping in the experience kind of what does that look like?
absolutely. One of my initial goals with this game, which did not necessarily, it doesn't lend to its success, I would say, but I wanted to make something really unique and kind of strange and alien, and that kind of seeps into the loop as well. So when you jump into the game for the first time, you're going to see a little intro cutscene, kind of walking you through where you are in this post-apocalyptic setting, and you're placing it a bit. You're going to arrange the components to your caravan. So these cars, these train cars, which are going to have strategic implications down the line. And then you're going to jump into racing across this post-apocalypse, heading into this storm, and surviving and taking out enemies along the way to navigate your way there. So the loop is really this sort of navigation across several different areas, picking routes that allow you to upgrade and keep your health high and not fall to the wayside along the way. Uh, and across four different maps, things are getting harder and harder. Enemies are getting stronger and stronger. Time is running out. And when you fail, I really wanted to impress a lot of the kind of traditional rogue light, like, oh, I lost my progress, but I know more about what I'm doing here. I know more about the situation. I know more about what routes work. I know more about the mechanics of the game. So it's intended very much to be a replayable experience where the map is shuffled around in terms of placement of things. Enemy placement is different. Um, so a repetitive experience, continuously trying to get to the end of the line.
Oh, that's very interesting. I like how it's this. So you call it like a train caravan. Like I find it interesting, kind of how it's this, like you're on, like we've had a few games I think recently, kind of like you're kind of on a vehicle and that's your mode of transportation versus kind of like you being on it. What was
Hmm.
kind of the level that you wanted to make almost the like the caravan a character versus like what like the player? I'm kind of curious, kind of the kind of, is there some sort of bigger thing with this being the mode of transportation, or kind of like how you kind of viewed it as you're kind of going through this process?
That's a great question. I definitely think the caravan being front and center was very intentional. I very much the kind of initial opus, if I'm using that word correctly, was focus on vehicles, focus on a train of cars. That's what really excited me. This idea of, I'm a big fan of the new Mad Max film, Fury Road. Unsure if you've seen it, but
I literally watched it
the
last night, if that makes you feel better.
really? Oh,
Yeah.
did I mention you should watch it, or is that
No,
purely
I literally just
coincidental?
watched it last night. My girlfriend never saw it, so we watched it last night to prepare for this weekend.
That is very funny. I love that movie. And the scenes specifically where those cars are racing across that landscape and there's like it's dust, it's windstorms, it's lightning. Those are so gripping to me, those scenes, because it's like you're fighting against the elements. This kind of unsurmountable force of nature is clashing onto you. And if you didn't have that vehicle as a form of protection, you would be blasted away in a heartbeat. Uh, so the vehicle as a catalyst to be able to make it through this force of nature thematically was very important to me. Mechanically, I definitely. It's interesting how you talk about kind of like instead of a player or instead of a player character, kind of focusing on the vehicles themselves. I do think it's a way. It's almost like the ultimate silent protagonist is to not have a human protagonist. Is to like put you in the seat of the vehicles and kind of be that what have that be what you're not empathizing with, but what you're kind of seeing yourself as. I do think there's an aspect of that. Does that make sense at all?
No, that totally makes sense. And it's also interesting because you get this extra level of, because it's abstract and it's like it's easier for almost everyone to relate to. Because like, let's be honest, none of us are big giant machines. But like there's this easier sense of like everyone can almost see this, be like, oh, we can now put what characteristics you almost want onto. And it's almost interesting of like this latching effect it kind of has. So, so as we're kind of going through, as we talked about, this is a like a post-apocalyptic kind of world. I'm kind of curious, when you think of those terms and you thought of kind of as you're making this, what to you does that mean? Obviously, because we've seen a ton of interpretations of like what post-apocalyptic means.
Sure. It's a great question and was something that I kind of struggled to figure out too. My approach to handling the story and the lore with this game was very much figure out emotionally what makes sense to me, you know, in playing the game, searching through how it made me feel, and then kind of let the story come from some of those things. And there is definitely a sense of desolation, isolation, of hopelessness, of searching for something, a loss. And that just kind of struck me. Putting even just simply like putting these vehicles on a really large kind of parallax scrolling background. It gave me some of those thoughts and feelings, and a natural progression point from that was to figure out this setting of desolation. So for me, what that means in the context of this game I kind of have some of my own interpretations about it, but to state it just plainly, the story at the beginning informs you that you wake up one day and there's no one else that you can find. Everyone's just disappeared. Your family, the other people in the city you lived in, it's just isolation. And then sometime later, years later, you see on the horizon this massive storm of souls. These, you hear the whispers and the cries of people that you recognize just barreling towards you. This force of nature that's inescapable. And for me, obviously, like you said, there's so many different interpretations of what post-apocalyptic means. But I think a lot of the most chilling and terrifying things in settings where an apocalypse has happened is those remnants of the past, those familiar things. Seeing what was there and how it's been changed or lost, or the sadness in that loss. And so obviously a giant storm of people is a bit hyperbolic and extreme, but I do think it's really attempting to be some sort of depiction of that.
It's very interesting. I really like the sense of like desolation, like the sense of like yeah, like post-apocalyptic. It's almost like a sense of like I'm almost by myself, or like there's a group of us almost by ourselves, but like you could tell there was. I always feel it's like you could tell something was there, and that's always almost I
Hmm.
think gives that extra layer of like sense of like oh this is like you could just tell someone was taken, something's gone, something like there was life here, there was something. I'm curious. So as we're talking to like the game, it's enemies are these like phantom kind of creatures. What kind of inspired them? Was that kind of just a this seems to make sense from it being like a more ghostly type stuff? Kind of did you want like when the player kind of meets in these things, did you want them to be a sense of almost curious or a sense of like oh I'm screwed when I see these kind of things in like a game like this?
I would definitely say some of both. I think so. I collaborated with an artist by the name of Salt and Pixel, who was great to work with in the conception and the making of those creatures. I think they came out less so on the oh shit because they're just so cute and wonderful. I love their design. But definitely the sense of curiousness I really wanted to foster. I had a lot of thoughts about souls, angels, phantoms, ghosts in kind of the conception of them. A very more on the kind of abstract conceptual side, you know, in terms of kind of thematically the enemy choice. Um, but on the later levels, I definitely want it to be more of a oh shit because they get pretty difficult. They can take out a car no problem if it's one of the stronger ones. So a bit of both, I would say. It was fun to figure out. I mean, that's one of those very typical design struggles is you have a red block that floats around and you say, okay, that's going to be something someday. And then you're like, 3 months later, what's it going to be? Got to figure it
I
out.
mean, just because all of
Oh,
us are okay with floating red block enemy, most people wouldn't be okay with floating red block enemy.
maybe that's a future game. It's just all going to be flown blocks. I don't know about that.
Like, did you ever
Maybe.
play the original Mike Bithell game, Thomas Was Alone? It's kind of like that, which is it's just the shapes. Like that was the ultimate level of he found it to make programming art just acceptable, which I think is always amazing.
That is amazing. I've never played, but I've seen a little bit of gameplay. It reminds me a little bit too of there's just a lot of good games where I mean the term kind of programmer art comes from, right? Where mechanically it's so solid. And maybe to the initial observer, it can be kind of put to the wayside, but uh, you don't always want to let good art get in the way of good mechanics. Don't quote me on that, but sometimes it can be distracting.
No, I agree. There are lines. I think I'm assuming the general public line is way past the programmer line, but I do agree with you. There's always that magic line of like it starts becoming too much, almost the art, or like it pulls away the resources where you should be putting them somewhere else, which is always
I think it's
interesting.
really I always think it's really interesting looking at other solo devs and seeing what they put front and center in their trailers and in their gameplay, because it seems pretty obvious. Like, oh, this person is very competent when it comes to art. Oh, this person's very confident when it comes to certain mechanics or their understanding of 3D modeling. It's always interesting to see what people put first and foremost, because you got to prioritize something. And when you got good art, make a beautiful game. Makes a lot of sense.
It's always that's weird because I come in the sense of like it being like the more programming sense of like, okay, well I can handle the code lifting. It's more the like art lifting where if I need collaborators or need a hand, it's kind of where I look. And I always find I'm almost always jealous of the art first people because it's this easier level of like, even if it's harder to make a final game by yourself, you have to learn a lot of different mechanical programming stuff. You have to kind of look into it like we all did in the beginning. It's always that like it feels like they have an easier time of just being like, here's the thing I'm thinking of like a selling a visual piece of it. And I'm always
Mm.
jealous of like that's the thing I have the harder time with. I don't know if you kind of had a similar kind of you pivot to one of those sides first.
Oh, absolutely. I've always been jealous of the art people. Especially, I've had the chance to collaborate with a lot of really great and talented artists. And I used to have that perspective more. I still do a little bit. I wish I was a better artist, even though I practice a little bit every day. I try to get better. But very much so. From I can't speak for all artists, obviously, but the artists I've worked with, they're when you program something out, when you sit down for half an hour and you've made a whole new system, granted, maybe spaghetti code, but like it works, like that's to someone that doesn't know how to do that, doesn't have skills regarding that, it's like magic. It's amazing. So I do think definitely it goes both ways. And it is really hard with art because, like you said, like it's such a important part of selling that game, part of like people getting that kind of immediate visual interest. You think of like a Kickstarter page, it's like, what are you looking for? You're looking for the art. Uh, who cares if you can program if your game doesn't look good in that specific context? But all the kind of ingredients are needed. Um, yeah, and as long as there's good opportunities to collaborate with good artists, hopefully all the programmers out there, they'll be getting by somehow.
No, I completely agree. So I want to jump into, if you don't mind. So I'm really this talk, so I just have like usually the Steam page or some sort of thing up in the background. I'm very mechanically curious about how one of your screenshots is showing what I believe is like the map, and it talks about like the storm moving in two turns, and kind of you have these spots you could go. What? How did you kind of come up with this almost like honeycomb like system for the player choosing? And if you don't mind, either, and it could be whatever one you want to talk about. Talk about like one of the different types of tiles, kind of the and what create obviously creates the type of levels the player can run into.
Hmm. So, one major point of inspiration, not a direct one, but was definitely Into the Breach, if you're familiar. Uh,
Mhm.
there's a number of strategy roguelite games that kind of they kind of stick with you. Monster Train is another one for sure that have kind of just stuck with me and kind of mold in the back of my brain, thinking about different game concepts, and certainly shows up in some ways in this project. And I just love cool interactive maps, not just ones where you pull them up, reference them, and then put them away, but ones that have some interactability component. And part of that 6 month scope, keeping things really tight, I was going to be very limited in terms of the agency of the player, what they could do. And so a big part of that was navigating with the map directly and having a good user interface. In terms of the kind of honeycomb design, the hex grid, which was a nightmare to actually program, it turns out it's actually pretty hard. Uh, uh, I mean, I thought it looked very cool, and it fit the kind of hard edge aesthetic I was going for with some of the other designs. And it allowed for a lot of when I experimented with squares 4 versus 6, I like the level of flexibility and different options that hex grids gave me versus squares. I thought there were some more interesting choices you could be making towards the middle of the map versus some other different configurations. In terms of a few different hex grids or one hex grid type that I really like, I guess I should speak to a bit about what the map is representing. So all these different hexes on the map are different areas that you can move into, different paths that you could be taking through the setting, through the landscape. And some of them are occupied by some kind of weather formation or storm. Storms that will debuff enemies when you drive through them. So kind of thinking back to that Mad Max example, this car racing through this tornado, the other people pursuing them being blasted to bits. If you go through a windstorm, enemies will be pushed back, which can work to your advantage. If you go through a hailstorm, enemies can be pelted with hail, them taking damage. So you're kind of actively participating in combat through just movement through the area. Part of the reason why strategic navigation can be so important in this context. Uh, a particular hex I like a good bit is that windstorm one in particular. Kind of figuring out the right timing to pass through that weather formation and to move your enemies into just the right place. I thought was a very interesting thing to explore, um, and it was fun to program the weather effects and all the sounds and whatnot. Very very fun.
No, that sounds like a good kind of time. So obviously, as I'm looking too, we've talked about this kind of idea of like a storm coming. So we talked about here of like the storm moves in two turns. Is the storm something that if like you hit head on, like it's over, or is it one of those like continual like just annoyances that will like minus resources or make stuff harder for you?
Great question, and it was something mechanically something interesting to explore a few different approaches. So as the storm is moving across the screen, you're seeing it kind of dominate the hexes and they change color and it just says deep snow. So the whatever was there up to that point, whether it be additional resources, whether it be an upgrade, it's gone now. It's been covered up. It's been made desolate. And when you drive through, you have no access to those resources. And the enemies just keep coming. And so if you take too long, eventually you're going to have a barren wasteland. And if you've taken too much time, it probably means that you've had a lot of enemies on your tail and you might not be able to make it to the end. So the aspect of the storm moving across is forcing you to make some strategic decisions before everything gets covered up and figuring out the best path to navigate to the end.
Yeah, that sounds like a fun kind of challenge there. I know we're kind of getting to the tail end of kind of time here, but I want to talk about, if you don't mind, kind of Wiko, is obviously we'll kind of jump around it. So the as we talk about this, like the character in a lot of ways is kind of like the train too, and I'm curious how you thought of kind of handling it as a thing you upgrade, and kind of for the player now, kind of what are the things they kind of do or kind of get to kind of change this caravan as you kind of continue.
Sure. So kind of speaking again to some of those roguelite influences, a big part of the kind of excitement I wanted to encourage on future runs was finding new upgrades for these cars and pairing them in interesting ways. Uh, so each car being kind of this collection of abilities. You can see on some of the cars, like, oh, there's one with mounted speakers and it has this kind of sonic attack. One has this turret and it has uh, a more blast focused attack, able to keep off those kind of phantom invaders. Very much, I wanted the idea as you move through this landscape is to find these upgrades, find this tech, salvage these, and then mechanically attach them and improve those different cars, choosing where the best placement of them is in order to meet your ends, in order to form a strategic unit to carry your way forward. And there's some pretty powerful combinations in terms of gameplay where you can really start lining up, you know, break here, line up these enemies here, apply this debuff, move them again. Some of the abilities are arguably very powerful, and it was fun to figure out because like we talked about earlier, so many ideas. A great place for me to put those ideas was in these new abilities, so it was pretty fun.
That sounds great. Again, the game we're talking about here today is Cryohazard. everyone should go right now, wishlist this game on Steam. It is the single best thing you do for any developer ever, besides buying the game, but at least wishlist it. The game comes out on June 14th, which will be very soon from us posting this, and it's about 3-ish weeks out from us recording this. I've got to ask, how are you feeling? And do you feel like you're going to get sleepy these next few weeks?
I'm feeling overall good. Uh, always game development's always a struggle, so this is a new chapter in that struggle. But I'm feeling good. I'm feeling excited to get it out there, to hear from people who get to play it. There's a demo currently on itch. There's going to be a demo up on Steam soon, so a great way for people to go and try it and see if they think it's cool. Give me feedback, all that good stuff. I'm feeling good. I'm feeling excited to keep working on Cryohazard. I feel very excited to work on future projects, and the future's looking exciting.
So again, the game here is Cryohazard. Obviously, everybody said go wishlist it. You can go to the website, which is bossypino.com. Is there anywhere else that we should be setting people to get them ready to for this game and any future things you might be working on?
So, kind of alluding to earlier, I am Bossy Pino on everything. So, if you search Bossy Pino, you'll find me on Twitter, YouTube, my website, like you mentioned, on Steam as well. Yeah, the main goal of my website is to keep people up to date on what I'm working on, be it Cryohazard or other projects. Always very excited to talk with people on there. I'm Bossy Pino on Discord as well. And I'm constantly working on new, cool, weird stuff, usually horror coded, but not always. Um, and very excited to have Cryohazard come out in a very short amount of time, and very excited to keep making cool games. So Bossy Pino is where you can find me.
Perfect. Well, thank you again for your time today, and best of luck as you very much get very close to the end of development here.
Hey, thank you so much. I really enjoyed talking today.
The SWW show and all of its affiliate podcasts are podcast by me, Mike Maroney, and AJ Losi, sometimes by our contributors, including Corey King. You can follow the SWW show on social media at the SWW show, or sooner or later you go to patreon.com/SWW to help us out. Thank you. We hope you enjoy the rest of your day.